The ballroom smelled like fresh orchids and old money. 300 of the most powerful people in the country stood beneath crystal chandeliers, sipping champagne from glasses so thin they could shatter if you breathed on them wrong. The men wore dark suits with pocket squares that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The women wore gowns that swept the marble floors. Everyone smiled too wide and laughed too loud. And in the middle of all of it, a 6-year-old girl in a navy blue suit and red bow tie stood perfectly still. She was staring. Not at the chandeliers. Not at the dessert table with its tower of tiny cakes. Not at the jazz quartet playing softly in the corner. She was staring at a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, standing near the stage with a glass of sparkling water in his hand. His suit was charcoal gray. His tie was burgundy. His hair was dark blonde, slightly pushed back, and his jaw was the kind that looked carved from something expensive. He was surrounded by people who wanted his attention, but his eyes were somewhere else. His eyes were on the woman across the room. Roberta Grant stood near the entrance in a deep red dress that stopped just below her knees. Her dark brown skin caught the overhead light, and her black hair was pulled into a low bun at the nape of her neck. She held a glass of water she had not taken a single sip from. Her fingers were trembling around the stem. She had seen him the moment she walked in. Charles Whitfield III. CEO of Whitfield Industries. One of the wealthiest men in the country. His face was on magazine covers, on financial news segments, on the side of buildings that bore his name. And 6 years ago she had loved him. 6 years ago she had shared his bed, worn his shirts, laughed at his terrible jokes, and fallen so deeply into him that she forgot where she ended and he began. And then she ran. She ran in the middle of the night with nothing but a backpack, a bus ticket, and a secret growing inside her. That secret was now standing 10 feet from him, adjusting her red bow tie with the focus of a surgeon. "Cece," Roberta whispered, her voice barely making it past her lips. "Come here, baby." But Cecilia Grant, 6 years old and 4 feet of pure determination, did not come. She had already started walking. Her small black shoes clicked against the marble floor. Her curly brown hair, pulled into 2 neat puffs on either side of her head, bounced with each step. She moved past a state senator, past a woman dripping in diamonds, past a waiter carrying a tray of something Roberta could not identify. And she walked straight up to Charles Whitfield III. The people around him noticed her first. A few looked down amused. One woman tilted her head. Calvin Brooks, Charles's COO, frowned slightly and glanced around for a parent. But Charles did not look down. He was still looking across the room at Roberta. Cece stopped right in front of him. She tilted her head back to look up. "Way up." "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was clear, polite, and loud enough that 3 nearby conversations stopped. Charles blinked. He looked down. And the world tilted. Later, people would describe what happened in different ways. Some said his face went pale. Others said he took a step back. Calvin said he watched the glass in Charles's hand tilt sideways and spill sparkling water onto the marble floor. Because the girl looking up at him had his eyes. Not a similar shade. Not a coincidence. She had his exact eyes. Blue-gray, flecked with silver near the center, shaped like almonds. They were set in a small brown face with round cheeks and a stubborn chin that was, without question, a miniature version of his own. "Why are you staring at my mother?" Cece asked. The room did not go quiet all at once. It happened in a slow wave, like someone turning down the volume dial one conversation at a time. First the people closest to them stopped talking. Then the next group. Then the next. Charles opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Cece folded her arms. She was not satisfied with silence. "She is right over there." She pointed at Roberta. "And you have been looking at her since we walked in. My grandma says staring is not polite." Roberta was already moving. Her heels hit the marble hard, and she nearly tripped on the hem of her dress as she cut through the crowd. Her heart was hammering so loud she could hear it in her ears, feel it in her throat, taste it in the back of her mouth. She reached Cece and took her hand. "Baby, we need to go." "But Mama, he was—" "Now, Cece." Roberta did not look up. She could not look at him. If she looked at him, she would see those eyes, the same ones she saw every single morning in her daughter's face, and she would fall apart right here on this marble floor in front of 300 people who would never let her forget it. She turned toward the exit. Her hand gripped Cece's so tightly the little girl winced. "Roberta." His voice. 6 years. 6 years of silence, of distance, of building walls so high she thought no sound from her past could ever reach her again. And then he said her name and every single wall crumbled like they were made of paper. She stopped walking. But she did not turn around. Roberta, please? The room was so quiet she could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass. She could hear Cece's small, quick breaths beside her. Mama, Cece whispered, tugging her hand. That man is talking to you. Roberta closed her eyes. She took one breath. 2, 3. Then she pulled Cece gently toward the door and walked out of the ballroom without looking back. The hallway was long, bright, and empty. Their footsteps echoed against the polished floor. Cece was half jogging to keep up, her little suit jacket flapping open. Mama, who was that man? Nobody, baby. He did not look like nobody. He looked like he knew you. Roberta pushed through a glass door and stepped into the cool Chicago night. The air hit her bare arms and she shivered, but she did not stop. She flagged down a cab, bundled Cece into the back seat, and gave the driver the name of their hotel. As the cab pulled away, Roberta finally looked back. Through the glass walls of the convention center, she could see the ballroom. She could see the crowd. And she could see Charles standing exactly where she had left him, not moving, not speaking, just watching her disappear. Again. Cece buckled her seatbelt with practiced ease and looked up at her mother. Mama, you are shaking. I am fine. You do not look fine. Roberta pulled her daughter close and pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Cece smelled like the lavender shampoo they had used that morning and the peppermints the hotel concierge had given her. I am fine, Roberta said again. We are fine. But in the reflection of the cab window, she could see her own face. And she did not look fine at all. She looked like a woman whose past had just walked up and introduced itself in a navy blue suit and a red bow tie. What would you do if the man you ran from turned out to be exactly the man your daughter needed? Before we continue, if you are feeling this story, subscribe now and tell me in the comments. Should Roberta have stayed in that ballroom? Roberta Grant was 21 years old the first time she saw Charles Whitfield III, and she spilled an entire tray of shrimp cocktail on his shoes. It was a Saturday night in October. The leaves in downtown Chicago had turned gold and copper, and the air had that particular bite that told you winter was coming whether you were ready or not. Roberta was working her third catering shift that week at the Palmer Grand Hotel, a place so fancy the napkins were ironed twice. She was a senior at Belmont State, double majoring in business administration and communications, working 2 jobs to cover what her scholarship did not. Her mother, Lorraine, sent what she could from Atlanta, but Roberta had told her to stop. Lorraine was on a teacher's retirement income, and every dollar she sent was a dollar Roberta knew she needed for herself. So Roberta worked. She worked mornings at a coffee shop near campus and evenings at whatever catering company would hire her. She was tired in a way that had settled into her bones, the kind of tired that coffee could not fix. But she showed up. She always showed up. The event that night was the Whitfield Foundation Annual Gala, a fundraiser for children's literacy programs across the Midwest. The guest list was a who's who of Chicago's elite. Politicians, media executives, tech founders, old money families who had been in the city since before the Great Fire. Roberta did not pay attention to any of them. She was focused on keeping her tray level, her smile steady, and her feet moving despite the shoes that were a half size too small because she had borrowed them from Denise. She was turning the corner near the bar when she hit something solid. Or rather, someone solid. The tray tilted. The shrimp cocktail slid. And 12 tiny glasses of shrimp cocktail sauce and garnish landed directly on a pair of polished brown shoes. Roberta froze. Then she looked up. The man attached to the shoes was tall. Very tall. He had dark blonde hair, blue-gray eyes, and the kind of face that belonged on the front of a magazine. He was wearing a navy blue suit with no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone, and he was looking down at his ruined shoes with an expression that Roberta could not quite read. I am so sorry, Roberta said. She dropped to her knees immediately and started picking up shrimp with her bare hands. I am so sorry I did not see you. I was turning the corner and... Please do not pick shrimp off my shoes, the man said. Roberta looked up. His voice was calm. Warm even. It is cocktail sauce, she said as if that explained anything. I can see that. He crouched down next to her, which startled her enough that she dropped the shrimp she had just picked up. Are you okay? You almost took a fall there. Yes. I am fine. Your shoes though. I can pay for them. It might take me a few paychecks, but... He laughed. It was a real laugh, not the polished kind she had been hearing all night from guests who laughed at things that were not funny. These shoes have survived worse. A little shrimp cocktail is practically a badge of honor. A manager appeared behind Roberta. She could feel his presence before she saw him, the way you feel a cold draft before you see the open window. Miss Grant, what happened here? She tripped, the man said before Roberta could answer. I was standing in the walkway like an idiot. My fault entirely. The manager looked uncertain. Mr. Whitfield, Roberta's stomach dropped. Mr. Whitfield. As in the Whitfield Foundation. As in the family whose name was on the banner hanging over the stage. As in the people paying for this entire event, including her paycheck. It is fine, Gerald, Charles said, standing up and brushing shrimp from his trousers with the kind of casual ease that only someone very rich or very unbothered could manage. Actually, could you get me a club soda? And whatever she is having. I am working, Roberta said quickly. Then whatever she would be having if she were not working. Gerald looked between them, clearly unsure of the protocol for this situation, and then disappeared toward the bar. Charles turned to Roberta. He extended his hand. Charles Whitfield. The third, unfortunately. My family has a naming problem. She shook his hand. His grip was firm but gentle. Roberta Grant. The first. My family does not have that problem. He smiled. It reached his eyes. That was the moment, though Roberta would not recognize it until much later. That smile. Not the practiced, camera-ready one she would later see in newspapers and on television. This one was crooked, a little surprised, like she had said something he was not expecting and he liked it. They talked for 11 minutes. She knew because she checked the clock on the wall when Gerald came back with a club soda and a ginger ale. Charles asked her about school. She told him about her double major. He asked her what she wanted to do after graduation. She told him she wanted to start her own consulting firm someday, helping small businesses find their footing. That is specific, he said. My mother had a friend who ran a hair salon for 20 years. Best braider in Atlanta. She closed last year because she could not figure out payroll taxes. 20 years of skill, gone because nobody helped her with the business side. Roberta paused. I want to be the person who helps. Charles looked at her. Really looked at her, the way people do when they see something they did not expect to find. I think you will be, he said. Her manager called her back to work after that. She picked up her tray, straightened her borrowed shoes, and went back to passing appetizers. But she felt his eyes on her for the rest of the night, and she would be lying if she said she did not glance his way more than once. At the end of the evening, when the guests were leaving and the catering staff was breaking down tables, she found a napkin tucked under her tray. It said, in case you need someone to test your business plan on. Or to ruin more shoes with. Below it was a phone number. She should have thrown it away. He was a billionaire. She was a college senior who could not afford her own shoes. The gap between their worlds was so wide you could lose a whole life in it. She put the napkin in her pocket. 3 days later she called him. He answered on the second ring. I was hoping you would call, he said. I was hoping you would answer, she said. And just like that they began. Their first date was at a diner on West Roosevelt Road. Roberta had expected him to pick some rooftop restaurant where the menu did not have prices, but he had asked her to choose. So she chose Linda's, a place with cracked vinyl booths and the best sweet potato pie in the city. Charles showed up in jeans and a green sweater. He looked different outside the gala, younger, less guarded. He ordered a cheeseburger and sweet potato pie because Roberta told him to, and he ate every bite. They talked for 4 hours. He told her about growing up in the Whitfield house, the expectations, the loneliness, the feeling of being surrounded by people who wanted something from you at all times. She told him about Atlanta, about Lorraine, about her sister Anita who had just gotten married and moved to Charlotte. He did not try to impress her. He did not name-drop or steer the conversation toward his accomplishments. He asked her questions and then he listened to the answers. Really listened, with his whole body leaned forward and his eyes on hers. When he drove her home that night in a car that cost more than her tuition, he walked her to the door of her apartment building and did not try to kiss her. Can I see you again? He asked. You are asking me? I am asking you. Yes, she said. You can see me again. He smiled that crooked smile. And she felt something shift inside her chest, something she had been keeping locked down for a long time. She went upstairs, sat on her bed and called Denise. I think I am in trouble, she said. Good trouble or bad trouble? Denise asked. Roberta thought about his laugh, his eyes, the way he had crouched down on the floor to help her pick up shrimp. The worst kind, she said. The kind you do not come back from. Over the next 3 months, Roberta fell into Charles's world like someone stepping off a cliff and discovering she could float. They saw each other almost every day. He would pick her up from her last class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, waiting in the parking lot in his black car, reading quarterly reports on his phone while students walked past and stared. On weekends he would show up at her apartment with takeout from wherever she wanted, and they would sit on her small couch and eat from containers balanced on their knees. He never made her feel small. That was the thing that surprised her most. She had expected the gap between their lives to feel like a canyon, impossible to cross without losing something on the way. But Charles treated her apartment like it was the most comfortable place in the world. He complimented her cooking when she made her mother's jambalaya. He sat on her floor and helped her study for her business ethics final. He brought her coffee in the mornings, always remembering she liked hers with 2 sugars and a splash of oat milk. "You remember everything," she told him once, surprised that he recalled a throwaway comment she had made about oat milk weeks earlier. "Only the things that matter," he said. By the 6th week, she had met Calvin Brooks, Charles's COO and closest friend. Calvin was practical, a little guarded, and clearly protective of Charles. He looked at Roberta with the careful eyes of someone assessing a risk. But after she beat him at poker during a game night at Charles's penthouse, he warmed up. "She is terrifying," Calvin told Charles. "I like her." By the 8th week, Charles took Roberta to meet his mother. Helen Whitfield lived in the family estate in Lake Forest, a sprawling property with manicured gardens and rooms that echoed when you walked through them. Roberta wore a green blouse and gray trousers that Denise had helped her pick out after 3 hours of debate. Helen was nothing like Roberta expected. She was soft-spoken, elegant, and genuinely warm. She took Roberta's hands in hers the moment they met and said, "Charles has told me so much about you that I feel like I already know you. But I would rather hear it all from you myself." They had tea in a sunroom filled with natural light. Helen asked about Lorraine, about Roberta's studies, about her plans for after graduation. She listened the way Charles did, fully, without interrupting. "Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman," Helen said. "I would love to meet her someday." "She would love that," Roberta said. And she meant it. Theodore Whitfield Sr. was a different story. He arrived halfway through tea, walking into the sunroom in a charcoal suit with silver cufflinks. He was tall like Charles but harder. His face had the kind of stillness that came from years of controlling every room he entered. His silver hair was combed back sharply, and his eyes moved over Roberta the way someone might look at a document before deciding whether to file or shred it. "Father," Charles said, standing. "This is Roberta Grant." Theodore extended his hand. His grip was brief. "Miss Grant." He did not add anything to that. He sat at the far end of the table, poured himself tea, and directed every question at Charles. How were the fourth-quarter projections? Had he reviewed the acquisition proposal? Was he prepared for the board meeting next week? Roberta sat quietly, her tea growing cold. She was not offended exactly. She had expected some resistance. Charles was the heir to a billion-dollar company. His father probably had a short list of women he considered suitable, and a college senior from Atlanta who waited tables was not on it. But the silence stung. Not what Theodore said, but what he did not say. He did not ask her a single question. He did not acknowledge her presence beyond the initial handshake. She might as well have been part of the furniture. On the drive home, Charles was quiet for a long time. "I am sorry about my father," he finally said. "You do not need to apologize for him." "I do though. He is not. He has a hard time with things he cannot control. And you, Roberta, you are something he did not plan for. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Charles looked at her. They were stopped at a red light and the street lights caught the silver in his eyes. "It is the best thing that has ever happened to me." That night, back in her apartment, Roberta sat on the edge of her bed and pressed her palms against her face. She was in love with him. She had known it for weeks, had been pushing it down, telling herself it was too fast, too risky, too everything. But it was there, solid and undeniable, sitting in her chest like a second heartbeat. She called Lorraine. "Mama, I think I am in love." "You think or you know?" "I know." "Then why do you sound scared?" "Because his last name is Whitfield." Lorraine was quiet for a moment. "Baby, a last name does not make a man. What makes a man is how he treats you when nobody is watching." "How does he treat you?" Roberta thought about the way he brought her coffee. The way he sat on her floor to help her study. The way he looked at her like she was the only real thing in a room full of pretending. "Like I matter," she said. "Then that is all you need to know." By the 10th week, Charles told Roberta he loved her. They were in his penthouse, sitting on the kitchen floor because the power had gone out during a storm and they were eating cereal by candlelight. She was laughing at something he had said about trying to cook pasta without electricity when he went quiet. "Roberta." "What?" "I love you." She stopped laughing. The candle flickered between them. "You do not have to say it back," he added quickly. "I just needed you to know. I have never felt this way about anyone." And I know our lives are different. I know there are complications. But when I am with you, none of that matters. You are the only place I feel like myself. Roberta put down her cereal bowl. She reached across the space between them and took his face in her hands. His skin was warm under her palms. I love you too, she said. I have loved you since the shrimp cocktail. He laughed, and then he kissed her, and the storm howled outside, and the candle burned down to nothing, and neither of them noticed. The next 6 weeks were the happiest of Roberta's life. She graduated. Charles was in the front row, clapping harder than anyone. Lorraine flew up from Atlanta and met him for the first time. She hugged him like he was family and told him his handshake needed work, which made him laugh so hard he had to sit down. Denise approved. Anita approved cautiously over the phone. Even Calvin started calling Roberta by her first name instead of Miss Grant. The only shadow was Theodore. He remained distant, polite when necessary, absent when possible. Roberta tried not to let it bother her. She had Charles. She had love. She had a future that felt bigger and brighter than anything she had dared to imagine. She did not know that everything was about to break. Roberta found out she was pregnant on a Tuesday afternoon in April. She was alone in her apartment, sitting on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub, holding a white plastic stick with 2 pink lines. She stared at it for a long time. Then she took another test. 2 more pink lines. Then a third. Same result. 3 tests. 6 pink lines. 1 answer. She was carrying Charles Whitfield's child. The first thing she felt was joy. It hit her like a wave, warm and unexpected, filling her chest until she thought she might burst. Baby. Their baby. She pressed her hand against her stomach, which was still flat, still ordinary, and whispered, "Hello in there." Then the fear came. Not fear of motherhood. Lorraine had raised 2 girls on a teacher's salary, and Roberta had grown up knowing that love was the one thing you never ran out of. She was not afraid of being a mother. She was afraid of everything else. Charles was the CEO of a billion-dollar company. His face was on the cover of Forbes. His family had been Chicago royalty for 3 generations. And she was a 22-year-old black woman from Atlanta who had just graduated and did not even have a job yet. What would the media say? What would the board say? What would Theodore say? She needed to tell Charles. She would tell him tonight. He was at the Whitfield estate for a board meeting, but he would be back by evening. She would make dinner, sit him down, and tell him. But first she needed to breathe. She called Denise. I am pregnant. Are you serious right now? 3 tests, Denise. Oh my. Roberta. Oh my. Are you okay? How do you feel? Are you happy? I think so. I think I am terrified and happy at the same time. That is basically what being pregnant is. I am coming over. Do not move. Denise showed up in 20 minutes with ginger ale and crackers. They sat on Roberta's couch and talked about everything. Names, timing, how to tell Charles, how to tell Lorraine. He is going to be so happy, Denise said. That man looks at you like you hung the moon. A baby is just going to make him look at you like you hung the whole sky. Roberta smiled. She wanted to believe that. She needed to believe that. At 6 that evening her phone rang. It was not Charles. It was a number she did not recognize. Miss Grant. The voice was clipped, formal. This is Theodore Whitfield's office. Mr. Whitfield would like to meet with you this evening at the Lake Forest estate. You will send a car. 7 o'clock. Roberta's stomach tightened. Theodore had never requested to see her. Not once in 4 months. Is Charles there? Mr. Whitfield's schedule is confidential. The car will arrive at 6:45. The line went dead. Denise looked at her. You are not going. I have to. If Theodore wants to talk, maybe it is a good sign. Maybe he is ready to accept me. Roberta, that man has not spoken 10 words to you since you met him. Maybe he is ready to speak 11. Denise did not laugh. The car arrived at exactly 6:45. Roberta wore a blue dress and flat shoes, because she was already learning that pregnancy made her feet swell by the end of the day, even though it was early. She sat in the back of the black sedan and watched Chicago pass by the window, the buildings shrinking as they moved north toward the suburbs, then disappearing into the green sprawl of Lake Forest. The estate was quiet when she arrived. The main house was lit, but there were no other cars in the circular drive. No staff at the door. Just Theodore standing in the foyer in a navy sweater and gray trousers, looking like a man who had been waiting. Come in, he said. No greeting. No smile. He led her to a study on the east wing, a room she had never been in before. It was paneled in dark wood and filled with bookshelves. A desk sat in the center, heavy and polished. Theodore gestured to a leather chair and sat behind the desk. The power arrangement was obvious. He was behind the desk. She was in front of it. He was the authority. She was the audience. "I will be direct with you, Miss Grant," Theodore said. He folded his hands on the desk. "I know about the pregnancy." Roberta's breath caught. She had not told anyone except Denise. How could he possibly? "The pharmacy you visited this afternoon is 2 blocks from a building I own. My assistant recognized you." He paused. "Word travels quickly when you share a world with my son." Roberta gripped the armrest of the chair. "I was going to tell Charles tonight. I would advise against that." The room felt colder. Roberta straightened her spine. "Excuse me? Miss Grant, I am going to be honest with you because I believe you are an intelligent young woman, and intelligent women deserve the truth." He opened a desk drawer and placed a folder on the surface between them. "My son is not who you think he is." He slid the folder toward her. Inside were photographs. 6 of them, printed on glossy paper. They showed Charles at various events, galas, restaurants, always with a different woman. Blonde, brunette, redhead. Each one looked like she belonged in his world. Each one was holding his arm, laughing at something he said, leaning close. Dates were printed at the bottom of each photo. Recent dates. Dates that fell within the last 4 months. Dates when Charles had told Roberta he was in meetings, on business trips, at late-night board sessions. Roberta's hands shook. "These are not real. They are very real. My son is charming, Miss Grant. That is one of his gifts. But charm is not the same as commitment. Charles has always had a rotating circle of companions. You are simply the latest." "That is not true. Look at the dates." Theodore's voice was calm. Almost kind. That was the worst part. He did not sound cruel. He sounded like a man delivering bad news that he wished he did not have to deliver. "He was with Meredith Calloway at the Drake Hotel on March 3rd. The same night he told you he was in New York." Roberta stared at the photos. Her vision blurred. She blinked hard. "I am not telling you this to hurt you," Theodore continued. "I am telling you because you deserve to make an informed decision about your future and the future of your child. Charles will not change. I have watched him do this for years. He finds someone, becomes infatuated, and then moves on. It is a pattern." He reached into the drawer again and placed a check on the desk. Roberta could see the number. 6 figures. More money than she had ever seen. "This is not a payment. Think of it as a head start. For you and your child. You are a smart young woman. You could build something real with this. Something that does not depend on a man who will eventually disappoint you." Roberta stared at the check. She thought about the cereal on the kitchen floor. The candlelight. His voice saying, "I love you," like it was the truest thing he had ever said. Then she thought about the photos. She stood up. She did not take the check. "I do not want your money," she said. Theodore leaned back. Something flickered across his face. Surprise maybe. Or respect. "Then what will you do?" Roberta picked up her purse. Her legs felt like they were made of something other than bone. "I will figure it out." She walked out of the study. Down the hallway. Through the foyer. Out the front door. The driver was waiting, but she walked past him. She walked down the long driveway, through the gate and onto the sidewalk. Then she called the only person she trusted. "Mama," she said. "I need to come home." Lorraine did not ask questions. "Not then. I will be at the bus station. Whatever time you get here, I will be there." Roberta went back to her apartment. She packed one backpack. She left her key on the kitchen counter. She did not leave a note. She took a midnight bus to Atlanta, pressed her forehead against the cold window, and watched Chicago disappear behind her. She told herself she was doing the right thing. She told herself the photos were real. She told herself Charles would not come looking. She was wrong about all 3. Atlanta in summer was a furnace. The kind of heat that made the pavement shimmer and turned every car into an oven. But Roberta barely noticed. She had bigger things to worry about. Like the fact that she was 22, pregnant, unemployed, and sleeping in her childhood bedroom with a poster of Destiny's Child still taped to the wall. Lorraine did not push. That was one of the things Roberta loved most about her mother. Lorraine Grant was not a woman who pried. She watched, she waited, and she kept a pot of soup on the stove because she believed that no problem in the world could survive a bowl of something warm. It took Roberta 2 weeks to tell her mother the full story. They sat on the back porch at dusk, drinking sweet tea while the crickets sang in the hedgerow, and Roberta told her everything. Charles. The love. The pregnancy. Theodore. The photos. The check she did not take. Lorraine listened without interrupting. When Roberta finished, her mother was quiet for a long time. "Do you believe those photos were real?" They had dates on them, Mama? I did not ask about dates. I asked if you believe them. Roberta looked down at her hands. They were resting on her stomach, which was just beginning to curve. I do not know what I believe anymore. Then let me tell you what I believe. Lorraine put her hand over Roberta's. I believe a man who sits on your floor and helps you study for an exam is not the same man in those photographs. But I also believe that fear can make us see things that are not there. And right now, baby girl, you are afraid. What if I am wrong, Mama? What if I went back and he? Then you would know. But you ran instead of asking. And that is going to sit with you. Roberta closed her eyes. She knew her mother was right. She had always known. But the fear was bigger than the knowing. The fear of hearing him confirm what Theodore had shown her. The fear of being another name on a list. The fear of watching her child grow up in a world that would never fully accept her. So she stayed. Cecilia was born on December 14th at 3:47 in the morning at Grady Memorial Hospital. 7 pounds 4 ounces. Brown skin, curly hair, and when she opened her eyes for the first time, they were blue-gray, flecked with silver near the center. Charles's eyes. Roberta held her daughter against her chest and wept. Denise flew down from Chicago. Anita drove up from Charlotte. Lorraine stood at the foot of the hospital bed and said, "That child is going to change the world." Roberta named her Cecilia after Lorraine's mother. Cece for short. And from the moment she came into the world, Cece was unlike any child Roberta had ever known. She did not crawl. She marched. By the time she was 10 months old, she was pulling herself up on furniture and walking with the focus of someone late for a meeting. She spoke early, full sentences by 2, opinions by 3. At 4, she asked Roberta to buy her a briefcase. "A briefcase," Roberta repeated. "You are 4. I need somewhere to put my important papers." "What important papers?" "My drawings. They are very important." Roberta bought her a small red briefcase at a thrift store. Cece carried it everywhere. By the time Cece was 3, Roberta had started building. She took online courses in business consulting. She worked part-time at a community development center, helping small business owners with their plans and applications. She was good at it, really good, and word spread. At 25, she registered Grant Consulting LLC with the state of Georgia. Her first client was a woman named Patricia who ran a catering company out of her home kitchen. Roberta helped her get licensed, set up a proper accounting system, and land her first corporate contract. Patricia sent her a fruit basket and a handwritten note that said, "You saved my business. You saved my family." Roberta hung the note on her refrigerator. Stayed there for 3 years. By the time Cece was 5, Grant Consulting had 12 clients. Roberta had an office, a small space in a co-working building in Midtown Atlanta. She had a part-time assistant, a college student named Jolene who organized files and answered phones. She was making enough to rent a 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony that overlooked a park. It was not a penthouse. It was not Lake Forest. But it was hers. Cece thrived. She went to a Montessori school where the teachers told Roberta, with a mixture of admiration and exhaustion, that her daughter was remarkably self-directed. Cece organized the classroom library by color. She started a snack committee among the 5-year-olds. She told her teacher that she wanted to be a CEO, but the kind that also makes pancakes. Every night, Roberta read Cece a story before bed. And every night, without fail, Cece asked the same question. "Mama, where is my daddy?" The first time she asked, Cece was 3. Roberta had prepared for this. She had read books about single parenting, talked to a counselor, practiced what she would say. "Your daddy is far away, baby. But he loves you very much." "How do you know he loves me if he is far away?" "Because how could anyone not love you?" That answer worked when Cece was 3. It worked when she was 4. By 5, she started asking follow-up questions. "What does he look like? What is his name? Does he know about me?" Roberta answered carefully. "He has blue eyes like yours. His name is not important right now. And I think he would love to know about you, but sometimes grown-up things get in the way." Cece accepted this. She was not satisfied, but she accepted it. Roberta thought about Charles every day. Not in the dramatic, tearful way she had in the beginning. The grief had mellowed over the years into something quieter, a low hum beneath the surface of her busy life. She thought about him when Cece tilted her head a certain way. When Cece laughed too loud at something small. When Cece stood in front of the mirror and studied her own face like she was looking for something she could not name. She never looked him up online. She could not. The moment she typed his name into a search bar, her past would stop being a chapter she had closed and become a door she had opened. Denise tried to bring it up once during a visit. Roberta, he has a right to know. And I had a right to the truth. His father made sure I did not get it. But what if the photos were fake? What if Theodore? Then Charles should have come after me. Maybe he did. Maybe he is still looking. Roberta changed the subject. She was good at changing subjects. She had been doing it for 6 years. Lorraine did not push. But sometimes, when Cece was playing in the living room and Roberta was working on her laptop, Lorraine would look at her daughter with an expression that said everything she was too wise to put into words. You are going to have to face this eventually. Cece turned 6 on a Tuesday in December. Roberta threw her a party at Denise's bakery, which Denise had opened 2 years earlier in a small storefront on Peachtree Street. There were cupcakes with sprinkles, a piñata shaped like a briefcase, Cece's request, and 12 children running in circles while Lorraine tried to organize them into a line. Cece wore a red dress with white sneakers. She blew out her candles and made a wish. What did you wish for? Roberta asked. Cece looked up at her with those blue-gray eyes. I cannot tell you, Mama. That is the rule. That night after the party, Roberta tucked Cece into bed. Cece held her stuffed bear, Mr. Pemberton, against her chest and looked up at the ceiling. Mama? Yes, baby? When you said my daddy is far away, how far away? Roberta smoothed Cece's curls. Pretty far. Like another city far? Something like that. Cece was quiet. Then, I wish to meet him. Roberta's throat tightened. She pressed a kiss to Cece's forehead and turned off the lamp. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and pressed her hand over her mouth. She was running out of time. Cece was getting older, smarter, more curious. The answers that had worked for a 3-year-old would not work for a 6-year-old. And the answers that worked for a 6-year-old would not survive a 7-year-old's interrogation. Something had to change. Roberta just did not know what. Then, 3 weeks after Cece's birthday, an email arrived in Roberta's inbox that changed everything. The email was from the National Business Innovation Summit. Roberta read it 3 times. Then she read it a 4th time to make sure she was not dreaming. Dear Ms. Grant, we are pleased to inform you that Grant Consulting LLC has been selected as one of 15 firms to present at the 12th Annual National Business Innovation Summit in Chicago, Illinois. Your application and portfolio were reviewed by our selection committee and stood out among over 400 submissions. The summit provides a platform for emerging consultancies to present their models to a panel of industry leaders, investors, and potential partners. The event will be held at the Palmer Grand Hotel from March 8th through March 10th. Accommodations and travel will be provided. Roberta put her phone down. Then she picked it up and called Denise. I got in. Denise screamed. Roberta held the phone away from her ear. The Innovation Summit? The one you applied to 3 months ago? The one that gets like 1,000 applications. 400 apparently. But yes. Roberta, that is enormous. Do you know who goes to that thing? CEOs, venture capitalists, people who write checks with a lot of zeros. Roberta knew. That was why she had applied. Grant Consulting was good, but it was small. 12 clients, 1 part-time assistant, 1 woman doing the work of 5. If she could land even 1 major partnership at the summit, it would change the trajectory of her business. She could hire a full team. Expand to other cities. Actually take a day off once in a while. There was one complication. The summit was in Chicago. Roberta had not been back to Chicago since the night she left on that midnight bus, 6 years ago, with a backpack and a broken heart. She had built her life in Atlanta specifically because it was far from everything she had left behind. Going back felt like walking into a house she had set fire to and hoping the smoke had cleared. But this was business. This was her future. And Cece's future. She read the email again. The host was listed at the bottom. Whitfield Industries, presenting sponsor. Her stomach dropped. Of course. Of course Whitfield Industries was the sponsor. Charles's company had been supporting the summit for years. She had known that when she applied. She had told herself it did not matter, that a company with 10,000 employees did not mean Charles himself would be there, that she could slip in, give her presentation, and slip out without ever crossing his path. She told herself this again now. It was a big event. Hundreds of attendees. The chances of running into one specific person were low. She picked up her phone and typed a response. Dear Selection Committee, thank you for this opportunity. I am pleased to accept. The second complication was timing. Lorraine was scheduled for a minor knee surgery on March 7th. Nothing serious, a procedure she had been putting off for 2 years, but it meant she would be at home recovering and could not watch Cece. Anita was an option, but Anita and her husband were taking their first vacation in 3 years, a trip to the Bahamas that had been booked for months. Roberta would not ask her to cancel. Denise could take Cece, but the bakery had just landed a large contract for a corporate event on the same weekend. Denise would be elbow-deep in buttercream from Friday through Sunday. Which left one option: Cece was coming to Chicago. "I will be so professional," Cece said when Roberta told her. She was standing in the kitchen in her pajamas, holding Mr. Pemberton in one arm and a juice box in the other. "I will bring my briefcase." "You do not need your briefcase." "Mama, I always need my briefcase." Roberta packed for both of them. A maroon blazer and cream blouse for her presentations. A green dress for the opening reception. Black flats because her heels always made her feet ache by hour 2. For Cece, she packed regular clothes, a couple of dresses, and at Cece's insistence, the navy blue suit. The suit was something Cece had found at a thrift store 3 months earlier. She had spotted it on a rack, tugged Roberta's hand and said, "Mama, that is my meeting suit." It was a child's navy blazer with matching trousers, slightly too big, which Lorraine had hemmed to fit. Cece wore it with a red bow tie she had picked out herself. "I am not wearing regular clothes to a business trip," Cece informed Roberta. "You are 6. I am 6 and a professional." They flew to Chicago on a Thursday morning. Cece sat by the window and narrated the entire flight to the woman next to her, who was either charmed or trapped. Roberta could not tell. The Palmer Grand Hotel was exactly as Roberta remembered. The lobby was all marble and glass, with a chandelier that looked like it was made of frozen water. The staff wore gray uniforms and spoke in the hushed tones of people trained to make everything feel important. They checked in. Their room was on the 14th floor with a view of the lake. Cece pressed her face against the window and said, "I can see the whole city." Roberta stood behind her and looked out at the skyline. Somewhere in those buildings was Whitfield Tower, 42 stories of glass and steel with Charles's name on the front. Somewhere in those streets was the diner on West Roosevelt Road where they had eaten cheeseburgers and sweet potato pie. Somewhere in this city was the life she had left behind. She closed the curtains. The opening reception was Friday evening. Roberta had planned to leave Cece with the hotel's childcare service, but the service was fully booked. She called the front desk, asked about babysitters, and was told there was a 2-day wait. "Looks like you are coming with me," Roberta told Cece. Cece was already putting on her suit. Roberta dressed in her green dress, the one that fell just below her knees and had a square neckline that Denise said made her collarbones look architectural. She put on gold earrings, flat shoes, and pulled her hair into a low bun. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked good, confident, like a woman who had built something from nothing and was ready to show the world. Then she looked at her eyes. And in them she saw the same fear that had been living there for 6 years. "Mama, you look beautiful," Cece said from the doorway. "Thank you, baby." "Are you nervous?" "A little." "Do not be. You are the smartest person I know. And I know a lot of people." Roberta laughed. It was the first real laugh she had managed all day. They took the elevator down to the ballroom. The doors opened, and Roberta walked directly into the past she had been running from. The morning after the gala was gray. Chicago had woken up under a low sky, and the lake outside Roberta's hotel window looked like hammered steel. Roberta had not slept. She had lain in the hotel bed with Cece curled against her side, staring at the ceiling for hours. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Charles's face in the ballroom. The way his expression had shifted when he looked down at Cece. The way his glass had tilted. The way he had said her name like it was something he had been holding in his mouth for 6 years, waiting for the chance to speak it. Cece slept soundly. Children had that ability to walk through chaos and still find peace at the end of the day. Her curls spread across the pillow, her bow tie hanging from the bedpost, her small shoes lined up neatly by the door. At 7 in the morning, Roberta's phone rang. The number was not saved, but she recognized the area code. Lake Forest. She answered in the hallway, pulling the door shut quietly behind her. "Roberta." It was Calvin Brooks. "He wants to see you." "Calvin." "He has been up all night. He is in the lobby. He said he will wait all day if he has to." Roberta leaned against the hallway wall. "How did he find me?" "The summit has a guest registry. You registered under your real name." Pause. "He has been looking for you, Roberta." "For 6 years. He hired people. He searched every city, every state. He never stopped." The words landed like stones in still water. "I will be down in an hour," she said. She went back into the room. Cece was stirring, rubbing her eyes with the backs of her hands. "Mama?" "Good morning, baby. I need to go downstairs for a meeting." I'm going to call room service and order you pancakes, okay? You stay here and watch your shows. Can I come? Not this time. Cece studied her mother's face with those blue-gray eyes. She was 6, but sometimes she looked at Roberta with an understanding that belonged to someone much older. Is it about the man from last night? Roberta hesitated. Yes. Is he a bad man? Roberta thought about this carefully. She had spent 6 years believing a story that Theodore had written for her. She had never questioned the plot. No, she said. He is not a bad man. She ordered pancakes, turned on the television, and took the elevator down to the lobby. Charles was sitting in a leather chair near the windows. He was wearing the same suit from last night, wrinkled now, the burgundy tie loosened. He had dark circles under his eyes. His hair was uncombed. He looked like a man who had not slept, eaten, or breathed properly in 12 hours. He stood up the moment he saw her. They looked at each other across 20 feet of marble floor. The lobby was mostly empty at this hour. A concierge behind the desk. A couple checking out. A janitor pushing a mop near the elevators. Roberta walked toward him. She sat in the chair across from his. He sat back down slowly, like his legs were not sure they could hold him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Charles said, "She has my eyes." It was not a question. "Yes," Roberta said. "How old is she?" 6. She turned 6 in December. Charles pressed his hands against his face. He held them there for several seconds. When he lowered them, his eyes were red. "Why?" His voice cracked on the word. "Why did you leave?" Roberta had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. In some versions she was angry. In others she was cold. In others she wept and begged him to understand. But now, sitting across from him in this quiet lobby, all the rehearsed versions fell away, and she was left with nothing but the truth. "Your father came to me," she said, "the day I found out I was pregnant. He showed me photographs of you with other women. Recent ones with dates that matched nights you told me you were working. You told me you had a pattern. That I was just the latest." Charles stared at her. "What photographs?" "Women at events. Restaurants. Hotels. Blonde, brunette. All of them looked like they belonged in your world." "Roberta, I have never." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "My father showed you these?" "He was very convincing." "He is a very convincing man." Charles's voice was flat. "Art. Those photos were not real. They were fabricated. I do not know how, but I know my father has the resources and the connections to make anything look real. I know that now. But you believed him then. I was 22 years old. I was pregnant. I was terrified. And the most powerful man I had ever met sat me down in his study and told me the person I loved was a lie." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking in her lap. "He offered me money. I did not take it. But I believed the rest. And you left." "I left. Without telling me. Without telling you." Charles stood up. He walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the glass. Outside, Chicago moved past in shades of gray. "I looked for you," he said. "I came home that night and you were gone. No note. No message. Your phone was disconnected. I went to your apartment, it was empty. I called Denise, she would not tell me anything. I called your mother's house in Atlanta, no answer." He turned around. "I hired investigators, Roberta. I spent 2 years searching. They found nothing. You had changed your phone number, your address. You were not on social media. It was like you had disappeared. I was in Atlanta the whole time. Under your maiden name, in a city of 5 million people with no digital footprint. My investigators were looking for someone who was hiding, and you were very good at hiding." Roberta looked down. "I was not hiding from you. I was hiding from what your father told me. But you were hiding from me. Because you did not trust me enough to ask." The words stung because they were true. "You are right," she said. "I should have asked. I should have come to you with those photos and demanded the truth. But I was scared, Charles. I was a 22-year-old black girl from Atlanta carrying a billionaire's baby, and his father told me I did not belong in his world. And part of me already believed that." Charles crossed the lobby and knelt in front of her chair. Not dramatically. Quietly. He took her hands in his. "You belong everywhere I am," he said. "You always did." Roberta's eyes filled. She blinked and the tears fell. "What is her name?" he asked. "Cecilia." "Cece. After my grandmother." "Cece." He said the name like he was tasting it. "What is she like?" Roberta laughed through her tears. "She is terrifying. She carries a briefcase. She calls herself the CEO of Snacks. She organized her entire kindergarten class by personality type. She sounds like my mother. She sounds like you. Charles's hands tightened around hers. Can I meet her? Properly? Yes. But Charles slowly. She does not know who you are. She has been asking about her father for years, and I have been giving her half answers because I did not know what else to do. Then we tell her together. When you are ready. I'm not going anywhere. Roberta looked at him. Same eyes. Same crooked smile. Same man who had crouched on a ballroom floor to help a waitress pick up shrimp cocktails 7 years ago. I believe you, she said. He squeezed her hands. I need to talk to my father. I know. It is not going to be gentle. I know that too. He stood up. He did not let go of her hands right away. Roberta? Yes. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. She wanted to say it back. The words were right there, sitting at the base of her throat. But she had learned the hard way that love was not a word you threw around. It was a promise. And she was not ready to make promises yet. Give me time, she said. You can have all of it. He let go of her hands, straightened his rumpled suit, and walked toward the lobby doors. Roberta sat in the chair for a long time after he left. The sun was coming through the windows now, breaking through the gray, turning the lake from steel to silver. Her phone buzzed. A text from Cece, typed with the careful concentration of a 6-year-old who had stolen her mother's phone. Mama, the pancakes are good. When are you coming back? Roberta smiled. She typed back, soon baby. Very soon. Charles drove to Lake Forest that afternoon. He did not call ahead. He did not want to give Theodore time to prepare a speech, to assemble his defenses, to put on the mask of the reasonable patriarch who always had a good explanation for everything. Calvin offered to come with him. You should not do this alone. This is something I need to do myself. At least let me drive you. Calvin. Fine. But if you need me, call. The drive took 40 minutes. Charles spent every minute of it trying to keep his hands steady on the steering wheel. He was not angry yet, not fully. The anger was there, but it was buried under something heavier. The weight of 6 years of searching, of wondering, of waking up every morning in a penthouse that felt empty no matter how many people were in it. He had missed everything. 6 years. Her first steps. Her first words. Her first day of school. Her first briefcase apparently. He did not even know what her laugh sounded like. His father had stolen that. The estate looked the same as it always did. Pristine grounds, white stone facade, tall windows reflecting the afternoon sky. Charles parked in the circular drive and walked through the front door without knocking. Theodore was in the sunroom reading a newspaper. Helen was beside him, working on a crossword puzzle with a cup of tea. Charles, Helen said, looking up with a smile. What a surprise. I did not know you were coming. Mother, I need to speak with Father alone. Helen's smile faded. She looked between Charles and Theodore. Theodore had not looked up from his newspaper, but his jaw was set. Of course, Helen said. She touched Charles's arm as she passed him. I will be in the kitchen if you need me. When the door closed behind her, Charles sat down across from his father. Put the newspaper down, Charles said. Theodore folded the paper slowly and placed it on the table. His expression was neutral. Controlled. The face of a man who had been expecting this conversation for 6 years. You went to Roberta, Charles said. I am going to need more context than that. Do not do that. Do not play this game with me. Charles's voice was low but hard. You went to Roberta 6 years ago. You showed her fabricated photographs. You told her I was unfaithful. You offered her money to leave. Theodore was quiet for a moment. Then he took a slow breath. How did you? She told me. This morning. She is here. In Chicago. She came for the summit. And she brought my daughter. Theodore's composure cracked. Just barely. A flicker in his eyes, a tightening of his hands on the armrest. You have a granddaughter, Charles said. Her name is Cecilia. She is 6 years old. She has my eyes and your mother's stubbornness. And she has gone her entire life without a father because you decided you knew what was best for everyone. Theodore stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the gardens. His reflection in the glass looked older than the man standing there. I was protecting you, he said. From what? From a decision that would have derailed your life. That was not your decision to make. Theodore turned around. For the first time in Charles's memory, his father looked uncertain. Not regretful, not yet, but uncertain, like a man who had built a structure he was now realizing might have a flawed foundation. You were 26 years old, Theodore said. You had just taken over the company. The board was watching your every move. Investors were skittish. And you were involved with a woman who... Choose your next words very carefully. Theodore stopped. He pressed his lips together. A woman who what? Charles asked. Who was not rich enough. Who was not from the right family. Who was black. That is not what I was going to say. Then what were you going to say? A woman who would have become a target. The media, the board, the investors, they would have picked her apart. Her background, her family, everything. I was trying to spare her. And you. You were trying to control me. The same way you have controlled everything and everyone around you for your entire life. Charles stood. You fabricated evidence. You lied to a pregnant woman. You drove her out of my life and let me spend 6 years thinking she left because she did not love me. Theodore's face changed. The mask slipped further. Beneath it was something Charles had never seen before. Guilt. I thought she would take the money, Theodore said quietly. That was the test. If she took the money, she was not worth your time. She did not take it. She just left. And you did not think to tell me. I thought it was over. I thought she had moved on. I thought you would move on. I never moved on. And neither did she. The room was very quiet. Through the closed door, Charles could hear Helen in the kitchen. A kettle. A cabinet opening and closing. Does your mother know? Charles asked. No. You need to tell her. Charles? Today. You tell her today. And then you are going to come with me to Chicago, and you are going to look Roberta Grant in the eye and tell her the truth. All of it. Theodore gripped the back of his chair. His knuckles were white. And if she does not want to see me? Then you will stand outside the door and wait until she does. Because that is what you owe her. Charles walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. I have a daughter, father. A daughter I have never held, never read to, never tucked in at night. Those are years I cannot get back. You took them from me. And the only reason I am still standing in this house talking to you instead of walking out forever is because Roberta's 6-year-old daughter deserves better than a family torn apart by an old man's pride. He opened the door. Helen was standing in the hallway. She had been crying. She had heard everything. Charles, she whispered. A granddaughter? Her name is Cece, Mom. She carries a briefcase. Helen pressed her hand over her mouth. The tears came freely now. Charles hugged his mother. Over her shoulder, he looked back at Theodore, who was still standing by the window, gripping the chair, looking like a man whose world had just shifted beneath his feet. Tell her, Charles said to his father. Tell her everything. He left. In the car, he sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes without starting the engine. His hands were shaking. Not from anger anymore. The anger had burned through and left something else behind. A strange, tender, aching hope. He had a daughter. She carried a briefcase. She called herself the CEO of Snacks. He started the car and drove back to Chicago. That evening, Theodore told Helen everything. He sat in the sunroom where he had lied to Roberta 6 years ago and told his wife the truth. Helen listened. She did not interrupt. When he finished, she stood up, walked to the garden, and stayed there for an hour. When she came back inside, her eyes were swollen but her voice was steady. You will fix this, she said. You will go to that girl and you will apologize. And then you will spend every day you have left earning the right to know your granddaughter. Theodore nodded. He did not argue. He did not deflect. He simply said, yes. It was the first honest word he had spoken in 6 years. The next 3 days moved at a pace that Roberta could not have predicted. On Saturday morning, Charles met Cece properly. Roberta had spent Friday night trying to decide how to explain the situation to a 6-year-old. She had called Lorraine, whose surgery had gone well and who was recovering on the couch with Anita's husband checking in on her. Just tell her the truth in words she can understand, Lorraine said. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for. And that child has been asking about her father since she could talk. So Saturday morning, before Charles arrived, Roberta sat Cece down on the hotel bed. Baby, do you remember the man from the party? The one you talked to. The staring man. Yes, the staring man. Roberta took Cece's hands. His name is Charles. And he is your daddy, Cece. Cece was quiet for a moment. She tilted her head, the way she always did when she was processing something important. The one who is far away? Yes, but he is not far away anymore. He is here. And he would very much like to meet you. He already met me. I told him to stop staring. Roberta laughed. She could not help it. He wants to meet you properly. Is that okay? Cece looked down at her hands, which were small and brown and still had traces of syrup from breakfast. Does he know about my briefcase? Not yet. I should probably show him. Probably. Charles arrived at 10. He had changed into a blue sweater and gray trousers. No suit. No tie. He looked nervous, which was something Roberta had never seen on him before. Charles Whitfield III, who had stared down boardrooms and closed billion-dollar deals, was nervous about meeting a 6-year-old. He knocked on the hotel room door. Roberta opened it. Cece was standing behind her mother, holding Mr. Pemberton in one hand and her red briefcase in the other. She had chosen to wear her navy suit again, this time with a green bow tie. Charles knelt down to her level. "Hello, Cecilia." "Hello. My mama says you are my daddy." "I am." Cece studied his face. She reached out one small hand and touched his chin. "We have the same chin." "We do." "And the same eyes." "We do." "Why were you not here before?" Charles looked at Roberta. She gave him the smallest nod. "Because I did not know where to find you," he said. "I looked for you and your mama for a very long time. But now that I found you, I am not going anywhere." Cece considered this. Then she held up her briefcase. "Would you like to see my important papers?" "I would love to." She opened the briefcase on the bed and showed him, one by one, the contents. Drawings, a small notebook with business plans written on the cover in crayon, 3 stickers and a granola bar. "The granola bar is for emergencies," she explained. "That is very smart." "I know." Charles laughed. It was the laugh Roberta remembered, real and unguarded, and it filled the hotel room like sunlight through an open window. They spent the morning together. Charles took them to the aquarium, because Cece announced that she had never seen a real jellyfish and this was unacceptable. He held Cece up so she could press her face against the glass of the jellyfish exhibit. He bought her a stuffed octopus from the gift shop, which she immediately named Dr. Tentacles, and placed in her briefcase alongside the granola bar. He did not push. He did not try to be everything at once. He asked Cece questions and listened to her answers. He laughed when she made jokes. He crouched down to her level whenever she wanted to tell him something. Roberta watched them together, and something inside her chest that had been clenched for 6 years slowly began to relax. That afternoon, Theodore and Helen arrived in Chicago. They came to the hotel. Theodore was wearing a dark blue suit. Helen was in a cream blouse and gray skirt. They both looked like people who had not slept well but were determined to show up anyway. Charles had told Roberta they were coming. She had agreed to the meeting, though she was not sure what she expected from it. They met in a private room on the hotel's 2nd floor. Charles, Roberta, Theodore, and Helen. Cece was upstairs with a babysitter the hotel had finally arranged. Theodore stood when Roberta entered. He looked at her and for the first time she saw him clearly. Not as the powerful patriarch who had sat behind a desk and dismantled her life with a folder of lies, but as a man. An old, tired, frightened man who had made a terrible choice and had been carrying it ever since. "Miss Grant," he said. His voice was rough. "I owe you an apology that I am not sure words can carry. But I am going to try." He told her everything. The photos were fabricated by a private security firm he had used for years. The dates were manufactured. The women in the photographs were models hired for other Whitfield events, digitally edited to appear with Charles. The entire folder had been designed to be convincing enough to drive a young, frightened woman away. "I told myself I was protecting my son," Theodore said. "But I was protecting myself. I was afraid of change. I was afraid of losing control. And I destroyed something precious because of my own fear." He paused. His hands were trembling. "I'm not asking you to forgive me today. I'm not sure I deserve that. But I want you to know that I am sorry, and I will spend whatever time I have left trying to earn the right to be in your life and my granddaughter's life." Helen spoke next. "I did not know what he had done. I want you to know that. If I had known, I would have stopped it. I would have come to Atlanta myself." Her voice broke slightly. "I am so sorry, Roberta. I am so sorry for all the years we lost." Roberta sat still for a long time. She looked at Theodore, at his trembling hands and his red eyes and the way his shoulders curved inward like a man carrying something too heavy. She thought about what Lorraine would say. She thought about what Cece would say. She thought about kindness. "I accept your apology," Roberta said. "Not because what you did was okay. It was not okay. It caused more pain than you will ever understand. But because I do not want to carry this anymore. And because Cece deserves grandparents." Helen began to cry. Theodore blinked rapidly and looked at the ceiling. "Thank you," he whispered. That evening, Roberta gave her presentation at the summit. She stood in front of a panel of industry leaders in her maroon blazer and cream blouse and presented Grant Consulting's model for supporting small businesses. Affordable, accessible, culturally responsive consulting that met entrepreneurs where they were. She spoke for 20 minutes. She did not use a teleprompter. She did not need one. She had been living this work for 5 years. When she finished, the room applauded. The panel chair, a woman named Dr. Frances Okafor, leaned into her microphone and said, "Miss Grant, your model is exactly what this industry needs." 3 firms reached out to her before she left the stage. One of them was a venture capital group offering to fund her expansion into 5 new cities. Charles was in the audience. He clapped the hardest. Afterward, in the hallway, he found her. "You were extraordinary," he said. "I was terrified. You did not look terrified. I have gotten very good at hiding it." He smiled. Then, carefully, he said, "Roberta, my company has a small business accelerator program. Resources, mentoring, infrastructure. I would like to offer it to you. Not as a favor. As a partnership. Your model is strong. My resources could help you scale." 6 years ago she would have refused. She would have said she did not need his help, did not want his money, could do it on her own. But she was not 22 anymore. She was 28, and she had learned that strength was not about doing everything alone. It was about knowing when to accept the hands that reach toward you. "I accept," she said. "Thank you." He looked relieved, like he had been holding his breath. "Was that so hard?" he asked. "You have no idea. If someone who hurt you came back with nothing but honesty and a broken heart, could you let them in again? This story is almost over, but yours does not have to end here. Subscribe and follow for more stories that remind you love always finds its way back. 3 months later, spring had come to Chicago in full color. The trees along Michigan Avenue were thick with new leaves, and the lake had turned from winter steel to a soft, rippling blue that caught the light and threw it back in pieces. Roberta stood at the window of her new office, the Chicago branch of Grant Consulting, on the 9th floor of a building 3 blocks from the river. The space was not huge, for offices, a conference room, a kitchen with a coffee machine that Jolene had insisted on, but it was hers. The Atlanta office was still running, managed now by a woman named Francine whom Roberta had hired 2 months ago. The venture capital partnership from the summit had come through, and Grant Consulting was expanding into Detroit, Houston, and Charlotte by the end of the year. Her mother's note from Patricia, the first client, the one that said, "You saved my business. You saved my family," was framed on the wall behind her desk. Cece had adjusted to Chicago with the speed and ease of a child who treats every new environment like a business opportunity. She was enrolled at Lincoln Park Academy, where her teacher had already sent Roberta 3 emails. One praising Cece's reading level, one noting that Cece had organized the other first graders into a classroom improvement committee, and one asking if Cece could tone down the CEO energy just slightly during nap time. Roberta kept all 3 emails. Charles had taken things slowly, exactly as he had promised. He did not move Roberta into his penthouse. He did not overwhelm Cece with gifts or grand gestures. He showed up. That was his strategy, and it was more powerful than anything money could buy. He picked Cece up from school on Wednesdays. He took her to the park on Saturday mornings where she taught him how to skip rocks. He was terrible at it, and he taught her how to read a compass. She was better at it than he expected. He came to her school play where she played a tree, her choice. She said trees were underappreciated, and he sat in the front row with a video camera. He and Roberta did not rush. They went on dates, real ones, like 2 people getting to know each other again after a long time apart. Dinner at the diner on West Roosevelt Road, which was still there, still had the cracked vinyl booths, still made the best sweet potato pie in the city. Walks along the lakefront. A Sunday afternoon at the Art Institute, where Cece insisted on explaining every painting to them in her own words. "That one is about a man who lost his hat," she said, pointing at a Monet. "I think it is about a garden," Charles said. "No. He lost his hat in the garden. That is why he looks sad." Charles looked at Roberta. Roberta shrugged. "She has a theory about everything." Love came back quietly. Not in a rush, not in a declaration, but in the small moments that stack up over weeks and months until one day you look at the pile and realize it is tall enough to stand on. It came back in the way Charles brought Roberta coffee every morning, still remembering the 2 sugars and oat milk. In the way he listened when she talked about work, really listened with his phone turned over and his eyes on hers. In the way he said goodnight to Cece on the phone every evening he was not there in person, always ending with, "I love you, Cece." It took Cece 5 weeks to say it back. They were at the park. Charles was pushing her on the swing, and she was leaning back with her eyes closed, her curls streaming behind her. Higher, she said. Any higher and you will be in orbit. Higher. He pushed higher. She laughed, that full body, completely free laugh that only children can produce. When the swing slowed, she jumped off with practiced confidence and walked up to Charles. She tilted her head back to look up at him. I love you too, Daddy. Charles knelt down. He hugged her. He did not say anything for a while. When he stood up, his eyes were wet, but he was smiling. Roberta, watching from the bench, let the tears fall without wiping them away. Theodore's path to redemption was slower, and it should have been. He began therapy in April, the first time in his 64 years that he had sat in a chair and told someone the truth about himself. He wrote letters to Roberta, one a week, not asking for forgiveness but offering accountability. He described what he had done and why. He described the fear that had driven him. He described the moment he realized the cost of his actions, not when Charles confronted him, but years earlier, when he watched his son spend Christmas alone in a penthouse built for a family that was not there. Roberta read every letter. She did not write back for the first month. Then she sent a short note. Thank you for being honest. That is all I needed. Helen became a grandmother with a kind of devoted intensity that suggested she had been waiting for this role her entire life. She drove down from Lake Forest every Sunday with homemade cookies, books she had picked out from the bookstore, and on one memorable occasion, a child-sized apron with CO Chef embroidered on the front. Cece adored her. Grandma Helen smells like vanilla, she told Roberta. That is because she bakes constantly. Can she move in with us? Lorraine flew up from Atlanta for a weekend in May. She met Charles properly, not as the name attached to her daughter's heartbreak but as the man who had been showing up every day for the past 2 months. They sat on Roberta's balcony while Cece played inside. You hurt my daughter, Lorraine said. It was not a question. My father hurt her. But I failed to protect her. I carry that. What are you going to do about it? Love them both. Every day. For as long as they will let me. Lorraine studied him for a long time. Then she nodded. Good. Now come inside and eat something. You are too thin. Denise visited in June. She and Calvin got into an argument about pastry crust at a dinner party and ended up exchanging numbers. Roberta pretended not to notice. Anita visited in July. She was suspicious of Charles for exactly 2 hours, until she watched him sit on the floor of Roberta's living room and let Cece put stickers on his face while he read her a story about a dragon who ran a bakery. Okay, Anita said quietly to Roberta. He might be okay. In August, Charles proposed. Not at a restaurant. Not at a gala. Not in any of the grand public ways the media would have expected from a Whitfield. He proposed on the kitchen floor. They were sitting with their backs against the cabinets, eating cereal, because the power had gone out during a late summer storm. Cece was asleep in her room. The apartment was dark except for a single candle on the counter. This feels familiar, Roberta said. I was thinking the same thing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He did not open it yet. He just held it. Roberta Grant, he said. You are the strongest person I have ever known. You built a life, a business, and a remarkable little human all by yourself. And I know you do not need me. You have proven that 10 times over. He paused. But I need you. I have needed you for 7 years. And I am asking, not as Charles Whitfield III, not as a seal, not as anyone but the man who sat on this exact kind of floor with you a long time ago, will you marry me? He opened the box. Inside was a ring with a blue sapphire, not a diamond. The color of Cece's eyes. The color of his. Roberta took the ring. She slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Yes, she said. 1,000 times yes. He kissed her. The storm howled. The candle flickered. And somewhere in the apartment a small voice said, I knew it. They looked up. Cece was standing in the hallway in her pajamas, holding Mr. Pemberton and Dr. Tentacles, one in each arm. How long have you been standing there? Roberta asked. Long enough. Cece walked over and sat between them on the kitchen floor. Does this mean we are a real family now? Charles put his arm around her. Roberta put hers around the other side. We have always been a real family, Roberta said. We just had to find our way back to each other. Cece leaned her head against Charles's arm. Good. Because Dr. Tentacles needs his own room and I am going to need a bigger briefcase. The wedding was in October. Small, intimate, on the grounds of the Lake Forest estate, which Helen had filled with white peonies and blue hydrangeas. Cece was the flower girl, walking down the aisle in a red dress with her briefcase in one hand and a basket of petals in the other. Theodore walked Helen to her seat. He stopped at the front row and looked at Roberta, who was standing under the arbor in a cream dress with blue embroidery at the hem. "Thank you," he mouthed. She nodded. In November, Charles and Roberta established the Whitfield Grant Foundation. Its mission was simple: provide funding, mentoring, and business resources to single mothers who wanted to start or grow their own companies. The foundation's first grant went to a woman in Atlanta who ran a catering company out of her home kitchen. A woman named Patricia who had once sent Roberta a fruit basket and a note that changed her life. Cece was named the foundation's junior ambassador. She took the title very seriously and requested business cards. On a quiet Tuesday evening in December, exactly 1 year after Cece had made a birthday wish she refused to tell anyone, the family gathered around the dinner table in their new home, a brownstone on a tree-lined street where Cece had her own room, and Dr. Tentacles had his own shelf. Lorraine was there. Helen was there. Theodore, quieter now but present, was there. Denise had flown in with a cake. Anita had driven up from Charlotte. Calvin sat at the end of the table, pretending he was not texting Denise under the table. Cece sat between her parents, wearing her green bow tie and a maroon sweater. She had her briefcase on the floor beside her chair. "Can I say something?" she asked. "Of course, baby," Roberta said. Cece stood up on her chair. She looked around the table at every face. "Last year on my birthday I made a wish. And Mama asked me what it was and I said I could not tell her because that is the rule." She paused. "But the rule also says if your wish comes true, you can tell everyone." She looked at Charles. Then at Roberta. "I wished for my family to be together," she said. "And now it is." The table was quiet. Lorraine wiped her eyes. Helen reached for Theodore's hand. Denise hid her face in a napkin. Charles lifted Cece off her chair and held her. Roberta wrapped her arms around both of them. Outside, the first snow of the season was falling softly on the city. Inside, the house was warm and full and exactly where it was supposed to be. Love had found its way home. And this time it was staying.